Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, the UN Global Conference on Climate Change gets underway in Germany today. It's the first major conference on the issue since President Trump said that the US will pull out of the Paris Accord unless his administration can secure a better deal. Well, the British government, however, remains committed to the Paris targets. Well, I'm joined now by Mika Minyo-Peluelo from Platform London, an ecological campaign group, and a very good afternoon to you. This is a gathering of 194 governments discussing how they will implement the Paris Accord. America will be attending. How significant is this meeting going to be, given what President Trump has said, is that he wants to pull out unless he can get a better deal?
Oh, it will still be extremely important. I mean, for a start, we're seeing a lot of arguments over the future of fossil fuels and to what extent we're going to be able to leave them in the ground. Trump is using his opportunity to come along and say we need more fossil fuels, which of course we all know that's nonsense. And in some ways, our government is at least saying, yes, we need to move beyond coal, but we need to ask ourselves the question of, are our actions actually meeting the rhetoric that we're using? So it's great that climate negotiators from the UK will be in Bonn saying, leave some fossil fuels in the ground. But then, a week after they come back, we're going to see the autumn budget here, and that's going to include reaffirming billions of pounds in subsidies and tax breaks for oil companies to drill in the North Sea, to extract every last barrel. And we should be asking ourselves, well, if we're actually committed, as the government says it is, to limiting global warming to 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees, then if we are committed to that, we need to leave 80% of fossil fuels in the ground. And we can't just dump that responsibility on other countries like Venezuela, like Nigeria, like Saudi Arabia. We need to look at our own backyard in the North Sea and say, well, when are we going to stop extracting? When are we going to shrink to tell oil companies, well, we're not going to keep paying you to take what's ultimately our oil out of the ground and to profit from it?
That's interesting, because so much of the focus around this meeting that's going on will be on the role of America, the impact of America pulling out in 2020, if indeed that does happen, because I understand the day that he's due to pull out of the treaty is the day after the next election, and many people questioning whether he will actually still be in power. But your focus very much actually on whether Britain can meet those targets.
Yes, exactly. I think we need to crucially ask ourselves, well, Trump might be getting all the headlines, but what does it mean for us here? And are we taking the leadership role that we claim to take? You know, there's also going to be new figures coming out this week showing that our local councils have got billions of pounds invested into fossil fuels. And we should ask ourselves, well, maybe we need to be building that transition here locally at home and making it a just transition, an exciting thing like this. Dealing with climate change should be an opportunity to make sure everybody in this country has warm homes. It should mean 1 million clean jobs. We should make sure that cities like Aberdeen, like Sunderland, are at the heart of a sustainable reindustrialization. Those can all be positive visions. One big challenge that we face is that, you know, we've had 40 years of privatization. A lot of the companies just don't want to cough up the money. And actually, if we want to meet those climate targets, we probably need public ownership. We probably need energy, transport, things like that to be serving the people. And then in the process, it'll be much easier to hit the climate targets. That's
interesting. And I wonder, you know, the whole issue of our position in this, we can't help but look at the government and its handling of, say, the Heathrow expansion, and whether or not that should go ahead, because, of course, the government just, I think, a fortnight ago, reopening the consultation into that third runway, which will have huge impacts on whether or not we're able to reach our commitments to try and improve air quality.
Yes, exactly. And all of us know that actually people have been out there on the streets in places like Heathrow, the local community next to Heathrow, for over a decade, for 20 years, saying it's enough. We don't need to just keep expanding. We don't need to keep growing. And actually, we need to listen to the communities that live next door to big infrastructure like that. And also, crucially, and that's something we should pay attention to during these climate talks, is we need to listen to those voices from the global south. the people who are on the front lines of climate change. And also, actually, a lot of those are the same countries, the same people that ultimately Britain colonized, that we effectively built our wealth on their backs over the past 200 years. And now they're paying the cost for that. And there's going to be a lot of negotiations in Bonn about, it'll be complicated, you know, there'll be lots of jargon about loss and damage and adaptation. But ultimately, it comes down to key questions like, we took their wealth. I know families in Egypt, in the Nile Delta, who are farming families. Now, when they stick a spade into the ground, salt water comes up. That's because of the rising seas, but also it's because of how the UK completely reshaped their economy, their geography, to serve our benefit for 100 years. And we do carry a responsibility for that.
Absolutely.
And part of that, yeah.
OK, well, Mika Minio Paralelo, thank you for shining a light on that and for coming on to Sky News this afternoon.
Thank you.
As climate change negotiators, they don't get much more important than Christiana Figueres. She was the principal architect of the Paris Agreement of 2015. And today, in an exclusive interview with News at 10 on the day the Bonn Climate Change Conference starts, Ms Figueres said she was still optimistic of meeting the target set in Paris, despite this year being one of the hottest on record. As for President Trump trying to pull America out of the deal, she said she wasn't too worried, as individual American states were still signed up.
L'accord de Paris pour le climat est accepté.
2 years ago, the world came together in Paris to agree an ambitious plan to fight climate change. Politics has been turbulent since then, but the architect of the historic deal has remained optimistic and watched promises turn into real action.
I see it in fact, in just the recent announcements from all of the car manufacturers who have already understood that we cannot continue to pollute the air and the atmosphere, and that they're moving over to electric vehicles. And I see it in finance. So, you know, for many different reasons, I can see that this transformation, this transition is underway.
In June, there was a blow as President Donald Trump threatened to withdraw the US from the agreement.
It's very sad when the President of the United States is so misguided by advisors that he stands up in public and makes statements that are just not correct.
So you're hoping that actually at some point the US may come back into the fold?
Oh, no, the U.S. will definitely come back into the fold. There's no doubt about that. Unless, of course, the United States sort of wants to go back to the dark ages, but who does that? It makes no sense.
It certainly doesn't make sense to the representatives of major American cities and states who gathered today in Bonn for the UN's annual climate summit. Figueres has a task for these people: make sure the world's carbon emissions peak by 2020, or we'll miss the Paris targets and cause chaos.
The increased storms, floods, droughts, you know, all of the disastrous part of climate change would grow to such an intensity and such a frequency that the economy just wouldn't be able to constantly reconstruct. That is a scenario that is absolutely one that we cannot allow ourselves to get into.
We've already had a flavour of this extreme world. 2017 is on course to be one of the 3 hottest years on meteorological record. We know the problem. We now have to work out our path through the solution. Alok Jha, News at 10.